Hi guys and welcome back. Today I have a practical endgame for you, which was played between Levon Aronian and really young Carlsen. This was played back in the 2006. Magnus was really young, but he was already very good, as you can see his rating here. He was black and they got into this position here. Carlsen here took the knight and he played g5, attacking the bishop. This works tactically, as you're going to see here. Magnus takes it, and you can see that tactic now. It seems like black is just going to lose here, but he has this tactic, knight to e5, and you can see check, and he takes the rook. And this is a critical position for us. As you can see, white is really better here. Black is the one fighting for a draw, because as you can see, this rook here on e7 is a really good rook on the 7th rank. It's attacking this pawn, it's keeping black passive, and this king is also better. It's going to join the attack somehow, and this king here is hardly going to move because this rook is going to keep on attacking these pawns here, and black's king is going to have to, defend these pawns and also this rook here. But I really want you to think about this position now and come up with a drawing plan for black. Now, a normal move like g3 takes wouldn't be that great because white is just going to recapture, and he still has this active rook here, and you still have to somehow protect this pawn, because if you don't, then he's just going to take it. And with this move you basically didn't do anything. I mean, if you want to now defend this pawn, and then this is a terrible move. This rook, you can see, is defending this pawn. As we like to say, this is a move for chess jail, and I mean, you really don't want to make this move. And now white would probably play something like rook to b7, with the idea that you can't do anything. Because if you play something like, I mean, you can't move your rook obviously, and if you play something like a5, the idea is basically to play b5, and this pawn here, as you can see, is going to fall. This should be winning for white, so this is really not what you want. So this move would be bad. And if you thought about move rook to a8 immediately, then again, shame on you. Not shame on you, but this is really a bad move. Like I said, this rook is really bad. And I mean, what are you going to do? He can, for example, take this pawn if he wants, or play rook to b7 also, but he would probably take this pawn. And now if you play something like a5, because otherwise I don't know what are you going to do, then he plays rook to b7, and I mean, whatever you do, this pawn is going to fall, and he's also a pawn up on the king side, so this is really not what you want. And that's why young Magnus came up with a move a5. Now, what is basically the idea of a5? The first option white has is probably to just take the pawn, right? And when you recapture, white thinks like, okay, I'm just going to win that pawn if you gave it to me. But then black's rook gets activated by playing rook to d8, and now if white takes the pawn, then you basically play f3. And you can see that this is really beautiful. This rook here is preventing this king from going anywhere, and also this pawn. And I mean, this king is just stuck here, and this should be enough for a draw. So this was his idea. And if he takes on f4, then you just play rook to d4, and you're going to take these two pawns here. Or if he defends it, then you're just going to take this pawn, and then you're going to be one fighting for a win. So this was the idea here. And the other option for white is to just take this pawn here, right? But then black can just take the pawn and play rook to c8. Now the idea again is to activate the rook, and when white plays rook to b7, attacking the pawn, you just play rook to c4, and again you're going to win some pawns here, and whatever white plays, you take another pawn, and this is a draw. You can see that white has a passed pawn here, but this is not enough for a win. So this would be a draw, but white decided to play rook to b7, and now we can see the similar idea again. He took the pawn and played rook to d8. Now again, if white takes the pawn, you play f3, and this king is again really bad here. It has like no squares to go to. So white didn't want to allow this, and he played f3 to stop it. But now you can see that this h2 pawn is going to become a target. So black played rook to d3, activating the rook, attacking the pawn, and white just moved his king to e2, and black attacked the pawn. You can see that he plays really actively. He activated his rook, and now he's going to take this pawn on the next move. So white had to basically take this pawn on b6, and now you can see black took this h2 pawn, and white took the pawn on f4, and now you can see what happened here. Black got a passed pawn as well. So this was a really good idea by Magnus here, creating his own passed pawn, so white has to focus also on the threats from Magnus. So black just went for it. He played h5, which is absolutely correct. Passed pawns should be pushed, and white played rook to b5 with the idea of coming behind this pawn, protecting the promotion square. So black just pushed the pawn. He played rook to h5. He pushed. White activated the king even more, and black played his king to f8. We can see this king is really coming into action here, but black is really just in time, and he played king to e7. Now f5 taking action, and black just took. And now I want you to pause the video and just think about the right move for black here. Okay, so the right idea is transposing into a drawn theoretical endgame. And just like Magnus did, you should play rook to b2. And the idea is basically, like I said, white takes your pawn and you take his pawn. And this is a well-known drawn rook endgame. But unfortunately, Magnus didn't manage to draw this, and he just lost the game. And this is really surprising, but it happens, it happens. He just messed up with two different plans, so that's why he lost the game at the end. But we're going to continue this game in another video, and I just want to mention what is the point here. You can see that black didn't just passively defend the pawn and putting his rook to a useless square, defending this pawn, just doing nothing, but rather he decided to play actively. He looked for active play, and that's what you should always do in these rook endgames, because activity in the endgames is a lot of times more important than the materials. So always look to activate your king, rooks, and basically every piece in the endgame. And because of active play, he came into a drawn position, as we saw. And like I said, we're going to continue with this position in our next video. And I really hope you enjoyed today's video about active play in the endgame. If you like these videos, please watch more of them, because you'll probably like them if you like that one. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.